Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor, where we bring you the best guests in all of true crime. This is a STS special, Surviving My Biggest Case. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning journalist, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. This is not a live episode, a recorded episode, but it is one that you do not want to miss. We do a series called Surviving My Biggest Case, and we bring on retired law enforcement, attorneys, you name it, criminal profilers, and they tell us the biggest case that they have worked in their career, or at least one that stands out to them. Now, many of you probably remember the hit Netflix show about Anna Delvey, which was called Inventing Anna. And today, David Sarni is going to tell us a very similar story that preceded this. So I guess, in other words, it is the OG Anna Delvey story. So Anna can take a back seat to this. Before we get started, David Sarni is a retired NYPD detective. I worked within several positions during his more than 27-year career. He is Brooklyn born and bred. He was a detective. He played a crucial role in then teaching detectives afterwards. And now he is an actual teacher, professor at the John Jay School of Criminal Justice in New York City, probably the finest criminal justice school in the nation. David, how are you? Welcome. And before we even get cracking on this, what got you? I know you're born in Brooklyn, raised in Brooklyn, all that. What got you interested in becoming part of the NYPD?
I always tell my students, again, thanks for having me. I tell my students all the time, it's opportunity comes. And I was doing a lot of different jobs. I was teaching high school at the time. And what I did is I was a personal trainer. This tells you how weird my life was. And I had a client who was an attorney, an entertainment lawyer. And she's like, listen, take the test. What's it going to do for you? I taught in 3 different schools. I was 23, 24 years old. I couldn't get really a solid gig as a teacher. She goes, take the test. What could you lose? And I took the test. There was the tri-agency exams back then. It was New York City Police Department, the Housing Police, and Transit. The Housing Police was available to take, so I took the Housing Police exam. Take it, pass it, and I just decided to take the job. There was an opportunity to do something different. I like teaching, but at a certain point, I think maybe I needed some more stability, and I'm still doing some good work. So I decided to go into the job, and I started out as a housing cop in 1995. And from there, I went to, moved on to narcotics from 97 to 05, and then I moved on to the detective squad. And then I ended up teaching and helped do the training for the police department. I think anytime you have opportunity to take something, I took it. And that's the reason why I did it. I needed a job. The end result was you needed a job.
I know that feeling. It's weird because I went into media and it was all by accident, but I actually have a little known fact. I have a master's in education. I actually taught up in Washington Heights in the upper part of Manhattan. So I hear you. It's the most important job, teaching, but it's also the hardest. And I knew there was no way I was doing that as a career. So, so you got Anna Delvey. This was a huge hit, Inventing Anna, on Netflix. But you kind of had the OG case here, and it revolves around a Blackberry. Tell me when you first got wind of this case, and how it all kind of came to fruition. And then I'll ask you some follow-up questions, I'm sure.
Yeah. The funny thing about this case, I was in narcotics for about 8 years. And then I did a cup of coffee in Midtown South, detective squad. And then I went over to the Ninth, where I did most of my work as a detective narcotics. And I just started there in, say, April of 05. And then I'm working, and then eventually somebody comes in, a complainant comes in to complain that someone broke into her house. And I was like, okay. So I sat down, we talked about this, and she goes, the guy's name is Andre Roper. That's who did it. And we had to break down the situation. When are they breaking in? Because, we have to find out the case if it's a legitimate crime, because that's one thing about when I do my teaching, I always tell the elements of the crime are the act, the attendant circumstances, and the intent. So she says, I met this guy in this store in the Wireless Cafe. He supposedly worked there. We talk a little bit. We get into a cab. We talk a little more. And apparently, I go away, and I come home after a couple of weeks, and apparently this guy was in my house. And I was like, how do you know it was him? She goes, well, the management company said there was a guy who got into my apartment. And I asked him, who was it? She goes, well, they said it was your brother. And she goes, I don't have a brother like that. Because he described him as like a 6'3", 300 pound, effeminate speaking male. And she's like, that's not my brother. So as we do this little brief investigation, she gives me the name. I get a photo array together, a 6-pack together. And she goes, that's him. That's the guy. I was like, okay.
Well, hold on. I've got questions already. So first of all, the guy, you broke up a little bit, but the guy's name is Andre Roper, Roper. Here's my first question. This is a city of 10 million people and more, during the day when the commuters come in. And so a woman comes to the precinct with this, basically question, complaint, and she wants to talk to a detective. How do you guys possibly filter through all this at the NYPD? Because you're such a big department with such a crazily big city. How did you even think to kind of, I guess, for lack of a better term, take this seriously from the get-go?
You feel bad when you have complaints come in. You always feel bad about the situation, but you have to determine if it's criminal or not. And I think that's a lot of that. Because sometimes people will come in, they rejected boyfriend, girlfriend. It's more of a civil incident or a civil issue. As we look at this case, we get a person, we're like, okay, we have him ID. That's a good thing. And we haven't left the office yet. I just want to make sure, okay, she knows who the person is who got into her apartment. Let's find out if it's criminal or not. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to start doing interviews of other people. You go back to the scene of the crime, in a sense. In this case, it's her apartment. And you're doing more background on this individual because you have to find out where he got all this information. Because it seemed to be also that her bank accounts were drained. And that was another interesting fact of that she lost money. She didn't know how that money was being taken. So we had to go, okay, so all this money's gone. We don't know where it went to. Mm-hmm. But she seems to be a victim of a crime right now. Let's find out if this is the person that we can tie to the crime that happened to her. Yeah. So, when you said that, you showed her a 6-pack. That's police lingo for basically like a sheet of paper with 6 different, possibilities of who it is. She gave you the name Andre Roper. So when you created that 6-pack, was it as simple as going into your, police database and just pulling his name and picture? Was he in there already? Well, we had something. Yeah, we had a person with that name, and what I did was I based it on the general description of the individual. She gave 6'3", male, black. So what you do in any type of these photo arrays, you'll put the suspect that you're looking at. I always say person of interest. Reality is the suspect. The suspect in with 5 individuals who are similar in appearance, not exact twins or anything like that, but similar appearance to the person that you are looking at as the perpetrator in the case. And with that 6-pack, with that photo array, and the policies and protocols are different. 2005 is way different than it is now. We're talking almost 20 years in the way things have changed with far as investigations concerned, protocols, procedures. But I'm coming from narcotics. I'm already gung-ho. Let's get this going. Let's get this case moving along. Let's see if we have somebody ID'd. That's great. Let's work. Now we can work backwards to make sure we have this person who did commit a crime. If he committed a crime, we'll do that. And we find out as this goes on, he does. So she's going into more detail. We have him ID'd. We want to go into more detail that this has been taken, this has been taken. She came into my apartment. My apartment was a mess. But we find out the house was clean after we got there. This takes a while to make this complaint because she's away, she's out of the country. So that's when she comes in and makes a complaint. So we're okay, where do you live? We go to one thing about detective work, a lot of times it's very team-oriented, which it is, but sometimes initial investigations are done by the only person available, which is the case detective being me. So I did a lot of the general footwork in the beginning. You still have partners in life, but the general footwork is going to be done by you. So we go to the building. I speak to the manager of the building. I said, you have, and I tell the person's name, the victim's name. Yeah, we have. She lives here. I said, okay. Apparently something happened where someone got into the apartment. Like, yeah, we heard about it. The father called them. They were heated. They were angry as can be. So I'm like, what happened? Well, the doorman let him in. So I speak to the doorman who let him in. And he tells me, yeah, this guy said he was her brother. And I was like, well, did he show you an AID? And he goes, no. And this is before all political correctness comes in. Now, the complainant is a 5'2" female, white in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
The suspect in this case is 6'3", 6'4", 300 pounds, and says it's her brother. And he never questioned it. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. Didn't like the AID, but he had enough information. And I will tell you this, that Andre is and I can't diagnose, I'm not a psychologist and analyst, but he's a true sociopath in the sense that he met this victim within half an hour. He got every bit of information from her to be able to develop a character, to be able to go to where she lived. Use this as an example. By the way, this is what I do, and this is my brother. I mean, she's my sister. Can I use the apartment? He goes up there, and sight unseen, no one questions him because he's confident in the way he talks. It's the way he was able to present himself. You know, if I have a 6'3" gay man coming in and saying, by the way, that's my sister, you're going to ask a question regardless of gender, race, anything. No one asks.
Right.
So we go.
Did you have to look at the doorman or the security guy at for those who don't know, New York City, there are a lot of doorman buildings, but whoever was there who let her up, did you have to look at that person to make sure, he wasn't part of some conspiracy here, that they weren't working together?
Yeah, we did a little bit. We spoke to the manager. We spoke to him. He just seemed, he was a new, then a fired doorman because they were getting sued after this. They got a big lawsuit after this. He was a new guy. He didn't feel comfortable about challenging anybody. He was new to the business. He didn't understand it. The guy says it. He seemed legit. One thing about we find out from people is people have a tendency to believe others are honest, regardless of anything. I know whatever psychological analysis that is. He just thought he was legit. He wouldn't ask the question. He's like, why would he say this? He must be real. How would he know the kid? How would he know the girl's apartment number? He did. He said, okay, he went upstairs. Manager was heated. They allowed me to talk to him. A couple of days later, when I went back to speak to him, he was already fired because they just left him there until they talked to us to have him actually confirm what he did to me. So like, oh, great. Now we fire him. And during this time, he's in that apartment for several days. No one in that building questions him because he's been okay to come in. He has parties. He sets up events in the apartment. He sends her an email or sends a notification to come to a party. And she's like, what party? It's her house. Yeah. He had this whole event set up for days, like a whole weekend of crazy parties.
And where is she now? She's just traveling? Is she out of the country?
She's out and abroad. She's out of the country. He knew that based on the conversation that he had with her between the cafe and the cab. So he knows she's away. So this is where he uses all his ploys. And now he has carte blanche in the house. So whatever's in her house is free game. Credit cards, property, all of this. And he's in the house for a couple weekends. I think he's having parties. Now, this is the funny part about buildings like this. It's a high-end building. If there were complaints about parties, they would notify the tenant. I don't know what happened between that. Like, you have a big party. They're throwing you out. They're getting you out of the park or something along the lines. Call the police. Police have never called at any of these events, not one. And apparently these parties were very big, like 50 or 60 people in the house.
Wow.
Crazy. And
so what's going on? I'm sorry, what's going on there? Like, why weren't the police called?
I have no idea. We have no idea why they didn't get into involvement until she came back to complain. Like, nobody next door neighbor going, this guy's having weird parties, but no one says anything. This is what happens, I think, in New York City. unfortunately, if Kitty Genovese back in the 60s, that whole, victims don't pay attention. It's not my problem. I don't deal with it. That could be part of it. It could be also that the next door neighbors were not around. I don't know. It was during the summer, so she's not.
By the way, not to interrupt, I keep doing it. I apologize, but just in the last few days, I'm sure you saw a video of that woman who was lit on fire in the subway. I mean, it's probably one of the worst crimes I've ever seen captured on video. And look, most people, I don't know of anyone that went to help her.
No,
so this, it came right back. When you saw that video, by the way, just take a half second off of this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What was your reaction to that?
I am beyond disgusted. There's times you get emotional about things, and you're watching this happen, and not more people were concerned about taking video and getting likes and getting people to see and getting these hits, and the victim is standing there, not one person, and I will say this from also my understanding, there were cops there, and no one seemed to make a move to do something.
Yeah, there's pictures of the cops just standing there, like they
don't know what to do. They're paralyzed, and this is, I think, an issue with younger people. Younger people have now becoming more conditioned to watch events than act. And with police, they might have it was so beyond the pale, it might have paralyzed them. Because reality is you don't see this happen every day. But someone's got to do something. And apparently everyone just was frozen. And no one, and it's something had to be something. And the unfortunate part is the perp was nearby and they kind of moved them off the set. As opposed to, this is again, basic police 101 stuff. People on scene, you retain them. You keep them on scene. They didn't. And they had an extra day for this. This is unbelievable. Probably one of the worst things, the governor's talking about putting National Guard down there and all this. You can't stop certain things happening. And one of the issues is you have people down there who are there to do damage. And that's what it is. This was an effect of a person who just saw a body, saw a female sleeping, and decided, I'm going to burn her up. Again, it's beyond the pale, beyond.
Yeah, you said Kitty Genovese, so that's what made me think, because we're talking about, just to circle back to the actual story we're talking about, I'll say it again, that was probably the most horrific crime, one of, if not the worst, that I've ever seen. If you want to be disturbed, then Google it. If not, I would suggest you don't. Yeah. But again, this person lit this woman on fire and she died. She was apparently asleep. But you mentioned Kitty Genovese, and it's another example of passerbys not really doing much. But in this case, luckily, it was just partying in a apartment building. So you get word that these parties were happening, and you get word that nothing was called into the police. So how do you and she's overseas at this point, but how do you move it forward once you kind of get to that point?
Well, we move it forward a bit by getting more information from her to find out what credit cards she's missing, what property she's missing. She's missing a lot of stuff. So we start trying to do a track or trace on those. We usually try to backtrack. Maybe they were sold. Maybe the pawn shop. So we'll do the pawn shop check. This is before eBay and things were existent, but it wasn't. People weren't thinking that automatically. So you're hoping to see any video footage from the location to identify the person or persons coming in. And oddly enough, we do get something later on about that, and I'll go into that as we go through the case. But I'm backtracking now. We have him doing this. What else is possibly happening in this case? And let me tell you, Andre is a genius beyond geniuses to be able to pull off what he's doing. And this is only minimal work that I know of. He does things that I didn't know he was doing also outside of this. So I'm doing my investigation. We find out about the place. We identify the location he did that in. I'm confirming with the DA's office. Yeah, we could do something with this. That's great. We're going to work on this case. We're going to get this guy arrested. We put him out as an identified perpetrator. Now I'm working backwards to see what other crimes he's committed. Apparently, what he did is he went to a vet. He went to a vet uptown in Manhattan, and apparently he said he was Lizzie Grubman's assistant. Now, Lizzie Grubman at the time was known as a big publicist.
Yeah.
And what he does is he takes his dog named Romeo up there. He gets Romeo medical treatment, this dog. He pays it with, I believe it's going to be with my victim's credit card. And that's how, and I'm like, okay, so I have another photo array put together, established to make sure that the people who saw him identified him. And they said, and I asked them, they identify him. I said, how'd you know he's Lizzie Grubman's assistant? Well, he told me. No identification, no phone numbers, nothing like that. And they took I said, did you notice the credit card number? The credit card wasn't even Lizzie Grubman's. It wasn't his. It was this other person. Yeah, we didn't really think much about it. We usually get this because we do it with my clientele all the time. We don't think much of it. So we thought this was okay. So we have another caper dealing with that issue. Mm. So Andre is now, I'm in communication with the family about apprehending him. We haven't located him yet. Apparently, her boyfriend gets word that he's at a club. He goes to another club where he also has another party on her dime. We get which I think it was called the Pink Elephant at the time. So we go to the Pink Elephant. We try to get information, some video. Video wasn't available, but we track him to go into the Pink Elephant. Then apparently they find out he goes to England. He leaves the country on her dime again. So now he's out of the country. And so what we do is I do what I can for work to identify him, to get at least what we call a bolo, be on the lookout for. He's already out of England. So what we'll do is we'll get a notification when he comes back to the States. That's our presumption. We're going to get him back. When he comes back to the States, we'll know he's coming back. We'll get to the airport. We'll grab him there. And everything is great. We have him ID'd and everything. So a few weeks pass. He does come back. He's going to one of the airports. So we confer with the Port Authority Police Department. He said, listen, we have a guy coming in. This is what he looks like. This is his ID. He's coming in from Virgin Airlines because we knew that. Could you grab him for us? They said, we can't grab him. We're like, why? You need we need an arrest warrant. I was like, we don't want to get an arrest warrant because the way arrest warrants work is once you have an arrest warrant, the absolute right to counsel is fixed in New York. So we can't speak to him. And if we got an arrest warrant, also arrest warrants are time. You only have a certain amount of time in order to arrest them. Once the arrest warrant goes away, it becomes a more difficult process. So we don't have an arrest warrant. So my boss drives over to the airport, my partners. I'm on the phone. We're all like trying to communicate this way. So they're going to the airport. I'm like at Command Central trying to coordinate all this. They go to the Port Authority and they said, listen, can we grab him in the airport? And Port Authority says, no, you can't because he's not under arrest. We're like, but he is. No arrest warrant. Okay. So they have to track him. They have to watch him follow him out of the airport and get into a car. They get into a car also. And they're beginning a moderate, not really a pursuit, but they're following along. Mm-hmm. Somehow my boss gets a call claiming she's Andre's mother. And why are you chasing my son? And we're like, how is this happening?
In real time. Like, that's crazy.
In real time. He's on the phone. Well, it's Andre's mom. Why are you chasing my son? He didn't do anything wrong.
Did you have light? Were you lights on at that point? Were you?
I don't know if there were lights on. I was actually back at home base trying to coordinate all this on the phone with him. He's like, I was talking to one of my partners. My boss is saying he's on the phone. It's his mom telling me, why am I chasing him? I'm like, first of all, how's he talking? How is she talking to you? How does she know? Come to find out later on, that's actually Andre pretending to be his mom on the phone, saying, why are you chasing him? They follow him. They follow him to the Ritz-Carlton in the financial district. He gets out of the car. The police guys get out of the car. He sees the cops, and he starts running. Now, he's 6'3", 300 and change. He's wearing flip-flops. He's running. There's partners of mine running after him. And these guys are in shape, and this guy's not in shape. He tries to duck under a car. I don't know why you think you're going to stick a 2-pound polonies in 1-pound bag, but he tries. He gets caught in it, and they grab him, they pull him out from they squeeze him like toothpaste out from underneath the car halfway, and they handcuff him. And my partners, and I was so, I'm like, he ran away from you. It's like he ran from you. And the guy I worked with, I won't say his name, Karen. Yeah, I won't. I mean, he's in great shape. I'm like, he outchased you. No, I caught him. The only reason why he caught him, he tried to squeeze under a car. And when he's in pursuit, he leaves his bags behind. These big luggage, a whole bunch of luggage he leaves behind. Mm-hmm. They grab that. They grab him. They take him to the precinct, and I see him. And I meet with him. They got all this. I mean, he went away for a long trip. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a long process. I'm not rushing this case because we want to make sure all our ducks in a row and make sure everything's right. He's got property on him that's his. Let's go to the property first, see if we find anything that's more incriminating. Yeah. And as I'm going through the process,
I'm sorry. Let me just jump in real quick because I should have asked this earlier. When the woman who was the victim first comes into the precinct and you do that 6-pack, you look them up. Like, did he have priors? Did you see? Is that why he was in the system?
Yeah, his priors for theft. He had priors for theft also. He was a low level. That was the fortunate part. He was low level in that fact. We had something on him still. So fortunately, they kept his photo on file. A lot of times, what will happen is we may have a suspect, but we have no photo of him, so we may have to do a sketch. This one was fortunate we didn't have to do a sketch because that would have been the case if I didn't have a photo to identify him. I would have to probably go to the sketch artist and have a sketch done so we could have something to identify him with, or at least a facsimile of. So if we showed it to the witness or victim, in this case, the female would describe it to the sketch artist. I could use that sketch throughout this process to see if he looks similar to that sketch. Because it's not like a photo array. It's a little different. You could say, yeah, that looks like him. That's fine. It's not like a one-on-one photo where you can't show. You have to always show the person in sort of a photo array. A sketch is a little different. But luckily, we didn't have to do that with him because he did thefts in the past, like a larceny in the past. He was very good at what he was able to do with her. It's amazing how a person can absorb so much information within a time frame and be able to spit it out to other people, and people believe you. And this is where when you talk cops being jaded, that's why we believe nothing. This is the reason why guys like him. Mm. And he comes in, we bring him in. He's a little disheveled, obviously. His property's with him. So I go through his bag. He's got stuff. I see he had an envelope with a car it was the Virgin Airline with a ticket that Sir Andre Roper on it. I guess they do for that. And in his bag is this video recorder. And I was like, okay, it's on his property. We're going to look into this. There's a video in there. So we watched the video. And it shows her house. He's having a party in the house with other people. He videoed this, or someone videoed for him. And during this, you're watching the party going on, and in the background, I don't know who said it, but someone goes, "I can't believe we're committing a crime," because they knew this place. Well, obviously, they knew this must be something he does regularly. That they go, he creates parties, he just manipulates people. So we have all this property. We go through stuff. He's got a lot of luggage, a lot of clothing. And I sit down with him. I say, hi, Andre, I'm Detective Sarni. I want to talk to you about some of this stuff. And I bring it back in the day, before video, and this is 2005, we have them bring a pad in. NYPD Blue always showed it, that they write down their confessions and all that. We would write down statements. I had my Miranda warning sheet available. I have the notepad, and I sit down. He goes, Detective, I will answer every question you have for me. Just don't write anything down. And this is where, as detectives go, what do? I don't write anything down. You got it, brother. Take the pad. take it outside. I read him his Miranda warnings. He waives his Miranda rights, and we sit down and have a conversation. And he tells me the whole thing of what he did. And he didn't think anything of it. He didn't think he was a bad person. He just decided he was just having fun. It wasn't a wrong thing for him to do. I didn't do anything wrong. I just, she allowed me to do this. She also, kind of authorized it. He's kind of pushing off the fact that he did something really wrong. But he said he was in the apartment. He hung out for a while. He stayed there. So he identifies himself at the location. He identifies
now let
himself.
me ask you, when you're, and sorry, we keep cutting. We're on a little bit of a delay, which is why it sounds like I'm being obnoxious. But let me ask you this: when you're speaking to him, obviously police are some of the best observers of human behavior. Can you see like how good he is at basically being a con artist? Like is he slick with you guys also?
Absolutely. You have guys like that, people like that. You have to be very careful what you tell them and how you talk to them, because they're looking to find tidbits of information about you. So I keep it as professional as possible. We just talk about the incident. But he's trying to find things out about me. Where are you from? Blah, blah. He's trying to get information like that. Because that's what you see in guys who are like this. They're like sponges. They absorb everything, and then they could throw it back at you in a particular way. So I stick to what I know about the case. We talk about the case. We talk about him, about his mom, and I say, why are you going to Ritz-Carlton? Apparently, he was getting a whole. Apparently he or was in the process of buying a place at the Ritz-Carlton in the financial district. And I'm like, how's this possible? You have no money. You stole money from this girl. You have nothing. And also in the property he had also, there was a photocopy of another of a credit card from another person. I won't give his name because he was very, the best way of putting it, he was not happy. He was very uncooperative about the process. He was kind of FU'd me because I don't want to do anything with this anymore. But American Express, who I will say this, if you have Amex, they will pursue this case to the nth degree. I spoke to Amex. He said, Mike, your victim doesn't want to help. He used our card fraudulently. We'll be the ones. We'll be the victims in this case, which was great. That's why I tracked things that he used on Matthew's card too. And that's the person Matthew. That's what I was looking at Matthew's card. And they use his credit card for other things. So we have another parallel case to what we have on this. But we're going to arrest him primarily on this case. We have this other case ongoing to see if we're going to then add something to him later on. And that's the thing. We're going to go on this case first, and then we'll work this case further. So we're seeing a guy who's used someone else's ID. We have him enough. The funny thing is, I think the victim is coming in, and Andre is coming down the stairs because we had to fingerprint him downstairs. And they kind of meet. And she sees him. And she's like, that's him, that's him. I'm like, and he looks at her and just kind of ducks his head a little bit. So it was an happenstance. That's how it worked. Yeah. It was kind of like that. She saw him, and that's the way it went. She wasn't supposed to, but she did. She called her to come in, and she just caught him that time. Like, okay, that's even better. So now she's identified him in a room. Fantastic. We're great. This guy, he's just, and we talked to the Ritz-Carlton, and apparently it was a female, and we asked him to describe the female who came in to buy property or buy this apartment. Well, it was very large, dark female, a female black, around 6'2" or 6'3", around 300 pounds. It was Andre. He dressed as a female to coordinate a purchase of a property at the Ritz-Carlton. So we're like, what is going on here? It is just so much going on. And I'm like, I just want to go with the one case. Let's worry about the other case. Because it just keeps going on. It just keeps building. This guy was so good. He tricked a bank into giving him money. He tricked a company, the Ritz-Carlton, to buy a property. And no one questions any of this. Not a soul.
I just don't even understand it. And it's so crazy because, like, we, with like a rational mind, at least be somewhat rational, like you wouldn't ever think to do it. But this guy is talking like 100%. Like he believes himself almost. Am I right?
Yeah. There's a line, and I take a lot of movies and shows. If you've seen Seinfeld, George Costanza says, "It's not a lie if you believe it."
Yeah.
And he believed it. He believed it so much that people said it's impossible. He's lying. I mean, they never questioned the fact that a 6'3" female was in their room or office trying to purchase property. You're like, what is going on here? I don't understand this. No one questions anything.
Wow.
It's crazy. I will say this, he was pleasant during the process, but you can tell everything he does, he's a manipulator. His stories were always about, his mom and everything's bad. And, he's had this. But each time he talks, he's fishing for more information from you. And that's why he was so successful. Within a 15-minute time span of meeting a girl at a wireless cafe and taking a cab home, to get into her house, have parties, take all her stuff and utilize that stuff, use that stuff to do other things and scam other people believing his story. Yeah. And it's just crazy on that end.
Where was he? Is he from is he a New Yorker originally? Like, did you get his backstory at all?
He's from New York. He lived in Brooklyn. His mom is from Brooklyn. They commingled money, I believe. They were part, he had some relationship with his mom, not one with his father. He was very protective of his mom to an extent. Not a bad, like I said, you like a kid would be if you're a single parent home and the mom's there. He's a little more protective of the mom. But he used his mom. We were always thinking, is she part of it? Is she privy to the information? Because we're looking at things that goes to another extent because there's another investigation that's outside mine. The second investigation I have is with Matthew's card. And that's where we find out extra credit card usages and the like. And we now are looking to arrest him based on that case, separately than this case. So while he's in, we build the case on that one. We're going to make an arrest on that. I meet him. I know he's getting released on bail, or he's going down to court. He's going to get bailed out on his other case that I had, the first case. So me and my partners go down. We see him there. We're waiting for him to come out. Then I'm like, hi, Andre, how you doing? Back again. You're coming with us again. And he's like, you're arresting me on Yom Tov. I'm like, what? Yom Tov? I'm like, how do you know about that? Because I'm Jewish. I was like, what? Now you're Jewish? I'm very confused about all of this.
For those of you who do not, that's a Yiddish word for a Jewish holiday. So you've got a 6'3" black guy who's very effeminate now claiming that this is such a New York story that the NYPD is trying to arrest him on a Jewish holiday. So go ahead, dude.
Yeah. And I'm looking, I'm like, I'm way confused at this point. I was like, well, Andre, regardless of this, you come with us again, guess what? And he's like, oh, no, not again. So we talk a little bit. It's not going to, he remembered Matt. He remembered the victim because I talked about that. And he goes, he didn't ever like the guy. So that's why he took his card. He goes, I didn't like him. So screw him. I'm going to take his stuff. And he did. And that's okay. You want to be that way? Be that way. He at least had a reason for it. The other one, he just got away with it. This one, he wanted to take his money because he didn't like him.
By the way, how old is Andre? How old is
Andre? At the time was mid-20s. Not very old. Not an old guy. Young kid. Young to do this. Young in the world of thievery.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and I arrest him on Matt on the Amex case, and then I get a phone call. Apparently, the feds were looking at him because he did some money laundering and wire fraud of over $1 million. Mm-hmm. And we talked a little bit with the detective, and apparently he said that his mother's involved. I said, how do you know it's the mom? Because he acts like the mom. He will pretend to be the mother. And did they see him personally? And I said, check to see if the mother was to be described by these people. So they work on their case. So I have him on the state cases. The feds are looking at him for money laundering and wire fraud in the federal case. And throughout this process, I remember the DA who I had on this case was just like, look, I don't understand anything. This is crazy. It is. Because who would expect this for someone that no one knows be able to get away with not just thousands, but almost 1 million plus in scams, and no one questions him. Not the banks, nobody. I was like, didn't they check ID? They look at this guy's identification. They check his bank records, bank statements. Nah, well, we kind of believe them. I'm like, wow. And that's why cops don't believe anybody, because we can't.
That's a good lesson, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, American Express is good to give them a quick shout out. Maybe they want to sponsor the show. But yeah, I've been a member, an American Express member since, I think it's hard to believe, since 1991, and they take care of you in that way. So I'm glad to hear that. So this guy, I mean, does he at this point, like, does he feel like you're closing in on him? Is there a sense of worry on his part that he's actually in trouble for something real here?
I never saw him worried. And that's the funny part. He was never. That's the thing about, I would say, about sociopaths or people I've dealt with. There's some criminals who are really apologetic and upset and really don't want to, or like really sad they did it, and they don't mean to do it. It just happened. It was a moment in their lives. And there are some who just, it doesn't affect. And there's sometimes the hardcore criminals, the burglars. This guy felt no shame in what he did. He was never really apologetic. He didn't care. I mean, he took people's money. One he took out of vindictiveness, and the other he took because it was given to him, any opportunity. And a lot of times when you talk about perpetrators, and I said perps tend to be that either apologetic and sorry for what they did, or absolutely no emotion whatsoever. And I would say he came close to no emotion. He got caught. He talked about it, and he had no qualms about doing it again, or even dealing with when he did it with my other victim.
So actually, before we go any further, let me ask you this: like, how do you know? Because this happens like on at different degrees, different, maybe not as slick as this guy, but there's all, now you always get these emails from, around the world, from the Nigerian princess or whatever it is. So What's your word of advice to people to avoid being scammed, whether in person or via computer? Do you have a piece of tangible advice?
I always check their IDs. We're seeing a lot more criminality taking place, a lot more. We've had instances of people who pose as FedEx employees coming to pick up property from stores, and they're not FedEx employees. You really have to vet your people out. Don't take things face value. Emails, phishing emails, always. I learned this. You kind of check where the email's from, and if it's not for example, I'll just American Express. If it's improperly printed, or if there's extra words there, or words that don't match what Amex usually sends you, don't answer it. I don't answer anything. I mean, you get these, unfortunately, so many times. You have to really be sure before you commit to something that it is factual, and the person you're dealing with is, I had DEP come to my house a couple of days ago, and I will say this, I respect what he did. The guy said, "Hi, my name is Joe," whatever, and he showed me his ID to show he worked in DEP. And those are things you ask for because you want to see that. If they have no appointment and they're showing up, we've had this happen with crews going into other apartments and burglarizing it. And sometimes they've been gypsy crews, and people like, well, gypsies, but they'll go in, distract, say, "Hi, with a gas leak on the third floor, I'm here to check the gas leak." Well, if that's the case, the super hopefully notifies you. But super to notify you, don't open the door for them because you don't know what they're there for. So, this is why, with police, the same thing. You always look to see their ID. Don't just take things at face value or someone's word for it. Have some sort of backup, ID, identification, some verification, a third-party verification, like a super or the company themselves, the gas leak in the neighborhood. Con Ed, you can actually look online and see the reported gas leaks. Use that. Anything to avoid having something in your house that's not supposed to be there, that you didn't even order yourself.
There you go. Public service announcement. So, at the end of this investigation, like, how many cases? I mean, I know you're working a specific case, but how many people do you think this guy Andre Roper basically conned at the end of this?
He's done it before. He's done it again. The funny thing about this, we only can do what people report. We can only investigate that. Are there Andre Ropers out there that scam? Absolutely. We see dating scams all the time. But the only time detectives and investigators can do anything is when the person makes the complaint. If we don't know about it, and I always say this, there's no complaint, there's no case, there's no crime. So we really look to determine that. And sometimes, unfortunately, what may happen to you isn't the crime, but we'll determine that and we'll tell you this. And that's the one thing I've always said. We've had victims come in. I had one victim who had a boyfriend. And as I said, I work primarily with the robberies and burglaries in the command, but any investigation came up, you just jump on board anyway. But she came in, she said her boyfriend scammed her. And we're like, how? They met on a dating site. They start dating. She meets the mom. Her and the mom with the boyfriend go buy furniture for her mom. I don't know why. His mom gets furniture from the victim. Now, she willingly does this. There's no scam. There's no amount of payback. He's going to pay her back. She willingly and voluntarily gives it to her, buys this stuff. She then sees him with the watch that he has on another dating site, and she feels that she's scammed. Here it comes back to what is the crime there? There was no crime. But, we did what we could for her. We explained to her what would happen. Maybe you could sue them, a civil suit, whatever. But criminality, we'll determine the criminality of it. That's the one thing about the police. Sometimes you'll have cops who will just poo-poo things.
Yeah.
I will say detectives tend to be a little bit more understanding. Like when our original DeAndre Roper victim came upstairs, she was more, they didn't know what to do with her. That's fine. That's what we're there for. We're detectives. We do this a lot. We talk to people all the time. And it found out that she was a victim of a crime. And I bet you that Andre has done this to other people. That's why the wireless cafe that he worked at, we don't know if he worked there or not. They denied everything. They were very uncooperative with the whole case. We forwarded that information, I believe, to the Better Business Bureau to see if they were part of this, were other clients scammed in that by them also.
Yeah. So, I guess putting a little bit of a bow on it. So when do you finally, like, first of all, do you end up working with the feds? Is that a separate case? Do the feds pursue it? And when do you end up, really arresting him in terms of, putting up a case, and does it go to trial?
Well, the case never went to trial. I believe he pled out because then they added the federal case a little bit later on to him because that was a separate entity to itself. So it was pled out. Again, this is the one thing about criminality in New York City or anywhere is we have probable cause to make an arrest, which we had. The prosecutor can determine whether or not the evidence we have brings this case beyond a reasonable doubt that they can guarantee a conviction. The amount, if he testified or if he went to the stand, I think they felt that this case would have gone bad. One thing about him, he's a consummate liar. And we have evidence to determine the arrest. We have enough to indict. Can we pursue the case further? The prosecution, we never go to trial on it. So within that part, he pleads out. The federal case he has is done in federal court, whereas I believe he had to pay restitutions for. He had some time in, and also he had probation. So their end, and when it comes to federal court, as we find out, federal court is there. It's a whole different dynamic than state court. And they had enough evidence that they perceived to believe that they could prove beyond a reasonable doubt, especially the prosecution, so they got to where they needed to. The DA's office in New York felt that this case was valid for an arrest. How far could we go with this? Now you have to bring the victim in. You have at least two victims. One is now Matthew, is very uncooperative. Amex will go to trial. Amex has no problem going to trial. The victim doesn't know if they want to pursue this any further because now you put yourself out in the public purview. You don't want to be seen. This makes you look like a bad person. So sometimes the prosecution will weigh on the side of caution, get something out of it, get some time in jail, some time in prison without going to trial.
Yeah. So how much time? Yeah. So how much time does Andre Roper end up spending in prison? Again, this is back in 2005. Do you know how much time he spent?
Maybe a year, if at best, maybe a little bit over a year. Because it was grand larceny, burglary. You can up the charges, but the plea was probably a little less time for that. I believe he did about a year.
And did he
then
have to pay back? Did he have to pay back this female victim who the original?
No, that wasn't, I believe, part of the plea agreement. I don't think that's what came up as an end result. I know restitution came back on the federal case, but as far as New York, and this happens a lot, unfortunately, we wanted to go after his money. I mean, my thing was, he's got money. We know he has money. We should try to get restitution for that. I don't know if it was furnished by or pursued by the prosecutor's office, because once the case went, it just got pled out. And, unfortunately, a lot of times prosecutors with pleas out, they don't really involve the detective anymore into the plea arrangement, because that's outside what we do. And I didn't have any more about what he did, but I know he did some time, but I don't think he did any part of restitution to the victim on my case.
What a wild story. I mean, every time I talk to anyone in law enforcement, it's always fascinating. This one, thankfully, no one's killed or anything. It's a little bit lighter, but I'm glad he was caught. Do we know where Andre Roper is today? What's he up to?
Well, the last I heard, the prosecutor spoken to him a few years back. I don't remember the exact time. Apparently, he was looking to transition, and he needed some documentation from the DA's office. Whether that happened or not, I have no idea. Or is it one of his scams again to say he's going to do something else? I don't know. And that was the thing when he told me, when the ADA called me and goes, I think he's going to transition. I was like, what do you mean? Like, they called me and they wanted the paperwork. And I was like, okay. I said, do you believe it? He goes, I don't believe anything this guy says.
Then I don't know. Maybe he's actually Anna Delvey. But this guy, of course, is he precedes Anna Delvey. It's hard to hide a 6'3" black man pretending to be a woman, although it appears that some people bought that. But this is you just heard the original, the OG Anna Delvey story way before there was Anna Delvey. David Sarni, he is a retired NYPD detective. More than a 27-year career. You heard he was a teacher before he became a police officer, and he's a teacher after being a police officer at the John Jay School of Criminal Justice in New York City, and an all-around great guy. So, David, thank you for being here. Appreciate it, and stick around for 1 second.